Thank you for joining us for this session of the AgrAbility National Training Workshop Encore webinars. My name is Paul Jones. I manage the National AgrAbility Project, which is headquartered at Purdue University. And our topic today is SARE grants, preparing a proposal. Our presenter, Lais McCartney, is with Purdue Extension and North Central Region SARE. Some of you may not be familiar with AgrAbility. We are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we focus on helping people in agriculture that have some type of disability or functional limitation. Every one of the AgrAbility projects around the country is a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one nonprofit disability services organization. There are currently 21 state projects funded by USDA around the country. In addition, there's one national AgrAbility project, and again, that's here at Purdue University through our Breaking New Ground Resource Center. And partners on that grant include Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, Osteoarthritis Action Alliance, AgriSafe Network, Colorado State University, and Washington State University. If you'd like more information about AgrAbility, or you'd like to view any of the more than 150 archived webinars on our website, please go to agrability.org. Again, our presenter today, Lais McCartney, is an agriculture and natural resources educator with Purdue Extension, Hancock County in central Indiana. She's also the state coordinator for the Indiana SARE program, which stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. She has expertise in both technology leadership and beekeeping. Lais and her husband create maple syrup on their hilly farm in Knightstown, Indiana, and sell to local groceries and restaurants. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, turn things over to Lais for the presentation.
Thanks so much, Paul. I think that Ed will be monitoring the chat, but I would love to hear if anyone's ever gotten any SARE grants. We're going to start generally about grant writing and then talk about some more detail about being a great SARE grant writer. So if you've ever tried to get a SARE grant or gotten one, would you mind putting it in the chat? And Ed, could you let me know if anyone has? So I'm so thankful.
Yep, will do.
Okay, thanks. I'm thankful to be visiting with you here from Indiana. It's a nice fall day. I know that some of you are actually from other states, so I wanted to share first that there's a lot of opportunities of ways to be involved with SARE. And one is you could actually try to be a grant reviewer and learn about the grants. It's a 2-year commitment and you do get paid for it. That's an option. And every single region has their own coordinator, and I'll share that with you here in a moment. And there's also, if you have written something or maybe you find something very helpful and you want SARE to share it, there's an outreach committee as well. There's also administrative councils that you can serve on and do grant reviews. And then also there's all kinds of programs. Every region is different. And so I wanted to share the people who you would contact depending on where you're located. Indiana is part of the North Central region. And so these are other regional coordinators that are very helpful. So I'm the Indiana state coordinator and I have a regional coordinator above me and they're in Minnesota. So, but SARE is all over the United States and also a lot of territories and protectorates. And so it's been around since 1988. And we'll talk a little bit more about what SARE, how long it's been around and what its mission is and what it does. So I want to share what I hope that we'll get out of this talk is some learning objectives. I would love that you would find out how to get involved with SARE and also just general grant proposal resources for you. Michael Fields Institute, which is here in the Midwest, but I bet there's places around you that have the same grant writing helps. So I'm going to share Michael Fields, but you could go online and see about them and maybe see what might be in your region. I would also like us to learn about writing grants starting with the end in mind, especially with logic models, which is just one type of model we could use. Then maybe talk about SARE grants more in detail, at least with the national, in our NCR, the North Central region. every grant area will have different timings, but we'll talk about some grants that I know about. And then we're going to then learn some specific grants that have been awarded, especially with disability in them, or maybe veterans, and just show what other people have been doing so you can kind of see what has been awarded in the past. So a grant proposal.
Nice.
Yes, tell me.
We have Suzanne, who has applied but has not yet received a grant, and Rose, who has received a grant. So
Awesome.
that's all I've seen so far.
That's awesome. And so let me know if you've tried for other grants too. I bet other people have tried for other grants. I know I just asked for SARE, but thank you for sharing that with me, Ed, and everybody. It's nice to hear when people have worked on SARE grants and kind of know a little bit about them, but I hope you guys will learn a little bit too. But a grant proposal is like any project. You see these kids working together right here. They're probably college students, and it takes a lot of work to work as a group. And many times when you're working on a grant proposal, hopefully you have a team. So could you write in the chat, what are some, things that you need to use when you're working in a team, some skills that you need to use? Anybody have any thoughts? Ed, would you mind share when they share that?
Sure.
Thank you so much. So a project, it's just like any project. Go ahead.
I'm seeing active listening, communication skills, listening skills, coordination, a plan, deadline.
Yes, that's exactly right. So it takes all those things to write a grant proposal as well. And when you're working
clear roles, that's a good one.
Yes, it takes even more communication, because when you're working with a team, you're going to come at it different directions. So it takes time. It especially takes time. You want to know the people who are in the process really care about it. They've got to, they're active stakeholders in that process. This is all coming from Michael Fields Institute. They're very helpful in some of their resources of helping you plan. And then just like you said, having that plan, knowing what the questions are to ask, or even just asking some questions of each other, seeing where you guys want to head together. You can't read
Here's
this.
a few more good ones.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Task management, patience, and reading the instructions.
That's exactly right. Good one. Yes.
And relevance just popped up too.
Thank you. That is awesome. So I know you can't see this little spreadsheet, but this is actually a spreadsheet from Wisconsin where they have helps about writing grants. And I will have all this. I can share this with Paul, and he can send it out to you so you can have the links. But it is a Excel spreadsheet, and it kind of gives you ideas of who's doing what. It tells you kind of, oh, that person's going to be writing the introduction, things like that helps you to know those tasks that you can help each other with, and timing. So there are resources out there. I don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel. So I will share those with you. So you don't have to link this right now. I will share the link. But some questions, find out where you're at, because if you don't know where you're at, you don't know if you even reach the goal. So what is the problem you're seeking to address? That takes communication and those questions. Maybe have other people already done some of the work on this. And we're going to talk about building on other people's shoulders and growing from what they've done, and just being able where those resources are to find what work has been done in this area that you might be interested in. Who else might be thinking about these same issues that you have that might help you write a grant or a proposal? There's just some strategies. What's important is knowing that timeline. What is realistic, not only for you, but also when will the money be ready? You have to kind of know about what grant is ready when. Would it work for your own project? SARE grants are usually, depending on where they're located, organized on the time of the year for the growth of a field crop or a crop. So in Indiana and the Midwest, we usually get funding around April. We can start getting funding for farmers and ranchers. And so, but it just varies what kind of grant you're dealing with and their timing. So it's good to know that timeline so you know what to expect. And also, usually when you get grants from the government, they want you to share your knowledge. So how can your information be useful to other people so that it's not just helping your farm, it could help others. So that's kind of learning where you could show that impact, and that would be a better grant to look at for the reviewers. Then what's important is if you don't know how to measure if you got there, you won't know if you actually succeeded. So it's important to know, oh, I want to invite 25 people and maybe 20 people came to this event. So how will you measure your success? And that's called usually evaluations and knowing if you've made it to your outcome of your goal that you had in mind. So these are just general things. So when we talked about having that end goal in mind, even before you start, there's models out there called logic models. This is only an example. And I share it because my person who shared this with me the very first time, she got this grant. It was for a maple syrup grant for Indiana to encourage consumers to eat more maple syrup because Indiana actually has maple syrup. It's delicious. But the very first time she wrote a grant, the reviewer wasn't very nice. And they said, don't ever write a grant again. You're really bad at this. But don't worry, people don't usually do that. I think that must have been that person's bad day or something. But she did not get discouraged, thankfully. And she tried for this grant. She had practiced. She got better as she wrote more grants. Just like when we start to learn to do any skill, we can get practice and get better at it. But this grant that she got was $500,000 for the state of Indiana to encourage more participation in eating maple syrup. So she didn't give up. So this is a process. But logic models are not perfect. They're not a perfect model. They're just a way to start with the end in mind. And you want to think, where do I want to go? And it's those outcomes at the end. And she has outcomes over there to the right. And they're broken down. They don't have to be broken down into knowledge, action, and long-term outcomes. But usually that's what they think is the most clear cut. Knowledge is you're sharing information with people. And if they change their behavior, like let's say I shared something about rain gardens with people, and then they actually put a rain garden in at their house or at a public place, then that would be a behavior change. And then let's say the outcome would be one day policy would be encouraging public places to have ordinances to encourage rain gardens. So those are very long-term goals that you may not reach with your grant, but it could be something you're thinking about. But then it goes back further. So we're going to show some examples. Wisconsin also has a great logic model template. So you don't have to write this out. You could just print one, and it has that end goals in mind on the right. And in the middle, it's basically your steps to get to that goal. So it's maybe if you have events, or if you create a pamphlet, or you're writing a little booklet. These are your outputs of what you're creating. And what you need to do those outputs might be yourself and your salary, or maybe you are paying someone else, like a grad student, to do counting. And so then the inputs are you, or maybe the information you need to get that done, like if you need software or things like that. Activities are obvious. It's like the events. But then the participants, like maybe how many people came to that event. And then you figure out, did they learn something? That's the long-term, then you get to the outcomes. So this is just a part of that logic model. It's, again, not perfect. There's assumptions that have to be made. There are external factors that sometimes we can't control. But it's good to think about those things. And it's just a map to show you a direction that you're headed, so you can have a general idea of where you want to go to get there, your steps that you're going to be taking, those small steps. The National Wildlife Federation has an awesome website, and they have information about the logic models. I know that sounds funny but they're very into conservation, and they want ag professionals and farmers who teach other farmers to learn nice, easy ways to create events that will make an impact for their goals. So they start with outcomes as well, which is, again, that end goal of what would make it you feel that you've succeeded in your goal. So that's called an outcome. I'm not going to read this. You can look at it later. It's just, that's the end goal. Outputs are those immediate results of your actions. So maybe you have a newsletter. How many people subscribe to your newsletter? That would be an output, which is basically a measurement. And then activities are what you did. So maybe you had a field day, or maybe we have a SARE grant person who was wanting to talk about the three sisters, and she had a backyard where she was growing her three sisters, the squash and the beans and the corn. And she invited her neighborhood to learn about the story of the three sisters. That was her activity. But her end outcome was she wanted to educate and build community in her area. But that activity of having people at her home and showing them, that was an activity. And then she could say 30 people came, and that's her output. And her input was maybe her time to grow those three sisters or to invite people. That's her, maybe her facilities. Maybe she needed to get a porta potty, things like that. That's what she had to put in to get the activity accomplished. Here's another little nice template from the Grow More training on the National Wildlife Federation. And they start from the end in mind. They start with those big picture. What do you want to achieve? Those outcomes. Then what do you need to do to get that to happen? What would you like to see? Would you like to have 30 people come? What kind of activity would that be? So it's just starting with the end in mind. Just a different way of looking at it. And I like this example from the National Wildlife Federation. They're talking about more farmers will have positive attitudes towards no-till. That's what their outcome, their long-term goal is, that farmers would have positive feelings towards no-till cropping systems. And what would an output be? They would like to see 75 farmers that learn about the benefits of soil health practices and what programs are available to assist them. So they're going to be measuring how many farmers learned that. And what did they do to get that to happen was their activity. They're going to have some field days where they'll invite farmers to see people doing no-till practices and some of those soil health benefits. So I like that they're showing examples in this Grow More training from the National Wildlife Federation. They're a great website and a good resource for many things, including these kinds of logic models. So SARE is one that I just love to talk about, but there are other grants around. But I've always heard SARE from farmers that it's a nice beginning grant, a gateway grant. I know that the Advisory Council for our North Central region, they're fine with bullet points. You don't have to have flowy language. It's very clear cut. They're looking at grants that are not necessarily theoretical research. Theoretical research obviously has a role to play in our lives and in universities and in science, but applied research is more about what SARE is all after. But SARE is a nice way to start into getting used to grants, but there's many other grants available. Grants.gov has many grants available, and there's also other guides to look at different grants. So whatever fits your timeline and your goals, there's many different options. So I don't sometimes like to share too many examples because your brain has a lot of stuff in there that you're thinking of, and I don't want to limit you in any way. So think broadly about what your project needs. Maybe they're very complex, but don't feel bad that you're just focusing on one section that's most important to you, because it will be important to other farmers too, or other growers. And then talk to people who have also gotten SARE grants. The neat part about SARE, which I will share their website soon, is because it is federally funded, they want it to be open knowledge. They want you to contact farmers that you're interested in, of what they've done, or other ag professionals, and ask them, what did you think about SARE? There's a farmer here who wanted to learn if her butcher shop could be financially viable, And she found out, no, it would not be financially viable without her being a full-time butcher shop. And she didn't want to do that. But she did a SARE grant to learn what return on investment would happen with that amount of work or animals at that shop. And she gets a call once a month from all over the United States and sometimes even in other territories in the area that follow SARE, and they love to ask her questions and she answers them. And she says she gets a call once a month. So don't feel bad to contact people when you look on the project database. I'll show you how to do that. It's very helpful. And then also think about what that grant's mission is. Every grant will state, just like someone mentioned, reading the instructions. That is a great cheat code. They're basically telling you what they're looking for. Your idea will mesh with theirs. You will have your own idea, but your goals should mesh with their goals. And so read what their goals are, their missions, and see if you can mesh your goals with theirs. You're both getting a win-win there. And then find out how many people usually get funded. That way you'll know how rigorous the competition is if you want. And then also find out how the funding comes in. SARE is a reimbursement funding, meaning that you pay for an item, then you turn in your receipt and you get your reimbursement. And you don't start spending money until you've been awarded the grant. So you just have to be careful on your timing. Sometimes, depending on the program, you could have some financial match requirements, and you have to just look at deadlines. Just like you said, read really carefully, and then ask those past award grant winners, how did they feel about the administration? Was it easy to work with them? I know SARE is easy to work with, and they're just regular people you can call anytime and ask them questions, especially if you're feeling nervous about timing or something like that. You can call and ask them. So I'll talk more now personally about SARE and what we do. But just like I said, there's so many different grants available, but SARE is a great starting point and one that is very helpful to learn with, I feel like. So the USDA actually has a whole definition of sustainability, and it's this, but I'm not going to read it. But the three main ones that I highlighted is that we call it the three-legged sustainability stool. And it's about social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And SARE was started back in 1988 with the Farm Bill, and they knew farmers cared about sustainability. And they're always on the leading edge of sustainability because especially economic sustainability, they need to make a living every year, but they also care about the environment because they need their soil to remain there. And then the social aspect is there too, that community building. And SARE, I love that we focus on that social aspect. It's very important. SARE's mission is to strengthen communities, increase producers' profitability, and improve the environment through grants and education. So they have many different grants that they have to promote its mission. Here's just some of the sustainability practices that SARE encourages. This is not all of them. This is just some ideas in one of the grants that we have in the North Central region called the Youth Educator Grant. And so you can see there's a lot of different sustainable practices in there. And they even have an other column, which because, there's so many different sustainable practices, we're still learning. So water quality, managed grazing, renewable energy, organic agriculture, permaculture, farmland access, talking about that community and social sustainability. I mean, I'm not going to read all these, but the point is there's a lot of sustainable practices that SARE encourages and a lot of people work towards with their grants. My region, the North Central region, includes 12 states. Indiana's one of them. And that's our map showing us in the United States there. But just like I said, there's other regions. So Would you mind sharing what state you're in with Ed? Ed, would you mind sharing where everybody's from when they do? I would just love to know if anyone's in any territories or in other countries. I'm not sure, but there's territories. This is only the Western region. I didn't bring every single region, but there's a Southern region and there's a Northeast region. Yeah, tell me about it.
Okay, we got a couple Nebraskas: Colorado, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Kentucky, Nebraska again, Pennsylvania, Maine, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York, Iowa, North Dakota, Maryland, Ohio, and Florida in the same message,
Awesome.
Indiana, North Carolina,
Awesome. So
Mississippi.
it sounds like a lot of you are from different regions. So that very first slide that I shared, who your regional coordinator is, and there probably is a state coordinator in your state as well. Then you can
There's
look.
Michigan.
Yep, awesome. You can look on the website SARE.org, and you can find your state coordinator and also find the grants that you have in your state and when they're due. Because your growing season is different than the Midwest, especially in the South and well, especially the West. Everywhere is different. And so those regions are based on those growing areas. So, and if you need help, you can contact me to get in touch with your people. So feel free to contact me. So SARE.org is that general website, and it stands for Sustainable Ag Research and Education, just like Paul said. It has so many resources. So these are hard copies. Here's one. It's a book called Farmer's Guide to Business Structures. You could buy a hard copy, but they have it all on PDF as well. So you can Control F, which means Control Find, and you can look up anything you want. But you can also, like I said, buy the books. Here's a really good soil health book. That's another good one. They have so many nice resources. Here's a great one, Building a Sustainable Business. It is, it's one that is binded so that you can open it really easy. It's basically a workbook showing you how to create sustainable business goals and developing a business plan for farms and rural businesses. It's very helpful. But that's all on the website. They have so many free resources, guides, videos. So, I mean, you could be on there for a very, very long time. It's very helpful. So in the North Central region, they also have all kinds of information about their grants. And you would want to go to your particular region. This is North Central region. And I won't go into all these because you guys are all from different places, but there's usually a farmer rancher, some sort of grant. I won't tell you exactly when this one's due, but they're only usually based on a farmer writing the grant. You can usually work with other farmers, and ours is usually due in December. And like I said, they get their funding before the growing season. And the partnership grant in the North Central region is an ag professional working with a group of farmers, 3 farmers. So that's a different type of grant. Research and education is a larger grant that's usually with a larger team because they just don't want you to be alone on those big grants. But they could be about doing research of applied research, maybe let's say learning about weed control, sustainable weed control methods. But there's also, you can share education. So let's say you wanted to create curriculum to teach others. You could basically build education depending on what your goals are. And then youth educator is people who are working with youth. So those are our grants. And then we have North Central region has 2 that come out in February for grad student and professional development. Now, I'm pretty sure most regions have professional development grants, and that is people who want to create information for other ag professionals so that we can learn more about sustainable agriculture. There's a lot that we don't know, of course, and we could learn a lot. So it's basically funding to help build training for ag professionals and people serving farmers. SARE is very, very special that farmers are always or should always be directing the work, because farmers are always pushing that envelope of sustainability. They're not just receiving the information the people who do the research find. The farmers are the ones saying, this is the research I want to see. This is the research I need in my fields. This is what's going to be helping me every day in my applied research. So that's what's important about SARE, and it's different. Now, look at, again, timelines are subject to change. So you always look at the website and your region, because they could change, and depending on what's going on with the grant. So just make sure you're keeping up to date with the website. It's a very useful website. In our area, farmer rancher grants usually are 2-year grants, and it is a reimbursement grant, and you write a report after the first year. Now, the reports don't have to be huge or long things. You could share how many people came to your activities, show pictures of what you did or pictures of your activity, or if you said you're going to make a pamphlet, make that pamphlet, and then you get reimbursed. Now, if you've not done your report, then you won't get your second year's reimbursement. You know what I mean? So it just encourages you, to do your report every year. Then you'll get your second year reimbursement when you start doing more work. Do you have any questions? Let me know if you have any questions. And grants are obviously, it's important to support those sustainable projects that are protecting natural resources, helping the community, and helping farmers make a living too, boosting that profitability. That's, again, that SARE 3-legged sustainable stool, which some people call the 3 Ps: people, planet, profit. Sometimes they call it that. SARE has an online grant system. So again, it'll depend on the timing, but there's a word count as well. You make a free login, and you go in, and you can even go look at it now and not turn anything in if it's ready. If that call for proposal is out, you can go in there and you won't mess anything up, and you don't have to worry about messing anything up. You don't have to push send or anything like that, but you can see what they're asking. They always tell you, again, what to do. It's called a request for proposal, and it's basically an instruction sheet of how many words you need to say, put for this answer, and what they're looking for in your answer. They're especially going to wonder, how are you going to promote those 3 sustainable principles? How will your project talk about social sustainability? And how will it be profitably sustainable? And how will it show environmental sustainability? So they will tell you what they want to see in that answer. Overall, there is the review committee, which is a technical committee, but then that goes as a recommendation to the advisory council, who has a bigger picture of the states, and especially who they're making sure they're not forgetting in grants, and making sure we're reaching out to our underserved audiences. And so they make bigger decisions and decide who gets those grants. There's always a sample call for proposals out on the website. So even if the timing isn't working out for this year, go ahead and get that sample call for proposal and start reading through it and thinking about it for next year. It's not too late, and you can start thinking about it already. Now, I wanted to share that what's really helpful is SARE has a project database system, that every single project that's been awarded since 1988 is in there. And I don't know if you guys are nosy like me. I love learning about what other people have been doing. It's kind of fun. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad nosy, but there's a lot in there. And for instance, there's a lady who just now grew truffles, is trying to grow truffles in Indiana, and she's got a project in there. People are doing so many cool things. So in the keyword section, in the project reports, search the content of all project reports, anything you're interested in. If you're interested in mushrooms, if you're interested in cover crops, you could put that here and it'll search all over the whole United States. Let's say you're interested in something very, very specific, like saffron, growing a saffron plant. Well, don't feel bad if someone from Minnesota is doing the exact same project. If you're down in Florida, it would be different. You know, even if you do the exact same project and say, hey, that person in Minnesota did this, but I'm going to see if it works in my state. That's okay. You still write all of your proposal, and it's okay to do just to see if it works in a different area. It's okay to do a repeat and a replication. But just make sure you're giving them credit, and they want to see if it works in your area, and other farmers in your area would love to see if it worked. So it helped them too. In our North Central region, these are the farmer rancher grants that have been awarded in the past since 1988. So Indiana's a little bit on the low side, so I'm trying to make sure I'm telling more people about it. And just like I said, those timelines could change. So just make sure you're looking on the website and finding out when your timeline is due. And make sure if it's central or mountain region, look at those times, because that's messed me up before. It tells you on your website when those proposals are due. So this is from our North Central region. And right there where it says Farmer Rancher Grant, it's really open right now. This is an old picture. This is from this past spring. If you push learn more, there is so much information there. You can find past requests for a proposal, and then you can print that out and see what they've asked before. This is hard to read, but it's basically the sample call of what they're asking. And they just tell you, I'm going to show you pictures that are closer up. So they tell you your eligibility. Unlike the FSA, which is the Farm Service Agency, you don't need to be a farmer for 3 years to try for a SARE grant. Usually with FSA, to get a loan, you have to have been showing that you're a farmer for 3 years. But thankfully with SARE, you could be a backyard grower, and you could be just starting sustainable practices, or maybe you've been a farmer for a very long time and you just want to try a new sustainable practice. Someone who raises crops or livestock, especially as a business, but it doesn't have to be a business, is a farmer. So they also have a strong commitment to diversity, and proposals that involve farmers that have been historically underserved, and the USDA has a definition of that, are encouraged, very encouraged. So I got that USDA definition this past spring, but I think it's up to date, but sometimes it does change. So, sometimes I have to go look again, but just it is very encouraged to try for grants. Here, SARE actually tells you what a successful proposal looks like from a farmer rancher grant perspective. Did you define your problem? And do you have some solutions? That's basically, we talked about starting with the end in mind. Do you know where you're headed, and what steps are getting there? Do you have a group, a team? That's really the best thing for you, so you're not alone. So involve some support system for you. Maybe your extension educator in your county. You probably have an extension educator from your land grant university in your county, and if you don't know them, you call them up. That's what people do to me all the time, and I love it. So call them up and introduce yourself and tell them what you're thinking. And lots of times they can write a letter of support. They won't write your grant for you, but just so you know, they have your back, and you can call them for support. There's also, of course, your NRCS, which is your Natural Resource Conservation Service. Usually they're the district conservationist. You're usually very helpful. And your soil water conservation district person in your county. There might even be local nonprofits, maybe some pollinator folks or people who are watershed folks. There's a lot of people thinking about sustainable ag from different perspectives that involve those friends with you if you're thinking about this. Then have a plan to measure how you know if you're getting to your end goal. Will you count the number of people? Will you ask them if they changed any behaviors? Will you do a little survey? Just have a plan and just share that with SARE, and that's how they'll know that you've thought about it. Emphasize how you're going to share your information. Will you put it on a website? Will you share it in a newsletter? How are you going to share your information that you learn or what you did so that other people don't have to reinvent the wheel? That's what it's really about. And then, just like I said before, put your goals to match SARE's goals with those three legs of the sustainability stool: people, planet, profit. And if you turn it in and get any reviewer feedback, listen to the feedback. See, and if you don't understand the feedback, call and ask. It's okay to call and say, hey, I didn't understand what they meant by this. Can you help me out? Call the regional coordinator, maybe call your state coordinator. We don't know the reviewer. That's confidential, but at least it could be someone else saying, oh, I think this is what they meant, and this is what they're asking. I've heard that SARE is really special also with their budget categories, because SARE respects and appreciates farmers so much. They want to make sure farmers are getting paid for their time. So if farmers are doing work, you need to have a salary in there for yourself. If you're measuring, like for instance, the lady who has a truffle farm, when she goes out and is measuring her truffle work, she may have a salary for herself. It depends on what her budget was. Fringe benefits usually don't count, but it depends on if you're paying someone else. It just kind of depends. Non-personnel stuff is your supplies. You can't go out and buy a truck with SARE funds. You can't buy things that are called capital improvements for more than $5,000. You can't build a building. You can rent a building. You can rent equipment. You could pay for your travel if you need to go somewhere to present your work or maybe to go get education for something. You can pay for publications for, let's say, if you're having a field day. Like I said about the software, you could buy software. You may even be able to buy a computer if it's justified in your budget. And maybe other direct costs, like you can have a meal if you're having a meeting with people and an activity, and you need to feed them in the middle of the day so that they don't pass out. So that's important. You can feed them. Now, if you're having a party after your meeting and it's dinner, that doesn't count because it's called participant support for an in-person meeting while the meeting's going on. So it's a special type of thing. It's not for after you're done and partying afterwards. So just sharing how you can use some of those funds. This is an example of going into that project database, and I used the word disability in there because a lot of times people are looking at, tools, assistive technology tools. So some people have gotten some grants. Only 14 projects were found using the word disability. I was surprised by that, but it just shows a few of those awarded grants using that term. And some of, like, for instance, there was one people that I just showed more people that are sharing new land access and things like that. But this is more details. So this one got funded in 2022 and basically showing how women might need different assistive technology than men and seeing the tools that could be helpful to women. So that was a research and education grant that was funded. Oh, they got it in 2021. It's a 3-year grant, and it's with the University of Missouri. So you see the person right there, Zhao. I bet you could contact that person and see what they're learning. And I'm sure probably right now they've probably turned in a project report to see what they're their first year. So if they haven't, I'm sure they're going to be doing it soon. But that would be cool. Improving the safety and health of women farmers by adapting farm tools and equipment. That's one project that's been with the disability in the search term. And then I looked at some that were focusing on reaching veterans, maybe. 97 projects were found this past spring. And so basically maybe some training. This person right here got a strawberry grant and raspberry out in Maryland. And they kind of want to train veterans for maybe some skills after they get out of the military. So that's just some information from their proposal. They basically wanted to teach people so that they could have some more skills. So I'm, like I said, the state coordinator for Indiana. You can text me. That is my text number. Lots of times I don't answer to random numbers, but I will text random numbers. So if you have any questions, you can totally text me, or if you tell me who you are, then you can call me. I'll probably answer on my cell phone. But on that website, you could find your state coordinator. But if you cannot get on the internet, you can call me and I will help you. So let me know if I can help you in any way to find your person that you can get help with. Don't be discouraged if the very first time you try for a grant that you don't get it. Don't worry. Most people aren't like my friend who got told never to try to write a grant again. Most people, most reviewers know that writing grants is a skill that can grow and it can be developed over time, just like any writing skill. So just be okay with feedback and that you can improve for the next time. So our learning objectives, we talked about general grant proposal guidelines and some resources, hopefully. I know I shared about Michael Fields Institute, and that's in the North Central region, but hopefully you could find out, ask your regional coordinator if any grant writing resources are available to you in your area. I hope we all learned about logic models and how they're one type of model, but starting with the end in mind when we're writing any proposal. And then we talked more in detail about SARE grants, and especially the farmer rancher one, since that's really our special one for farmers. But all farmers are directing SARE grants. Every SARE grant should be directed by farmer research. And then we talked about how to use that project database. Hopefully we learned how we can use that and put our keywords in for whatever we're interested in. I will share this with Paul so you'll have it. And I'm going to stop sharing here. And I hope then we can ask questions.
Thanks so much, Lais, for all that helpful information. And thank you to our participants for their comments in the chat. I know we had multiple questions, so I'm going to turn things over to Ed Sheldon, and he's going to lead that Q&A period.
Okay, before I get started here, Paul, could you the EJ Sheldo? Could you turn that one into make that a co-host, because that's where I've got the questions.
There you go.
And where's my? Hey, for once I have it right. Now I'm just gonna get back to the right. Okay, yeah, we have a few questions, Lais. The first one, I hope this came in early, so I hope this was somewhat answered. I don't know where to start for grant writing.
Yeah.
Any further thoughts on that?
I totally understand. So if that person wanted to share, if they have more details, but also text me, call me. You know what, maybe, I don't know if you grow anything, if you're a farmer, or what your interest is, but there's probably a grant for your interest, even if it's not farming. But so many people have so many various interests that it would just depend on what you're dealing with right now. Let's say you have Like, for instance, I have a farmer who had a pond that wouldn't hold water, and they tried to get a grant for maybe making terraces and showing the terraces might work. And so it's not wasted space. But it kind of just depends on what's going on in your life at this moment. So I'm happy to talk to you anytime. You can text me or call me. Sound good?
Okay. Now, this is a comment. One way to
Yeah.
cut
Yeah.
reverse psychology. Yeah, tell somebody they're no good at something and they come back and that's
Yes.
effective.
Yes.
Here's one. Is it bad or cheating to use Chat GPT or some other AI to help with the wording?
That's a great question. So I think SARE is, like I said, they don't care about flowy language. I mean, now if you feel like you have to make it flowy, SARE would not. I mean, SARE is fine with bullet points. So the wording for SARE grants isn't as important as what your goal is, which is really up to you. Do you know what I mean? And if your goal can mesh with SARE's. But I wouldn't say it's bad to use AI for help with wording, but just that it's coming from your heart. You know, don't feel like that wording is what's important as much as what you want to accomplish with that grant. That's my opinion.
Sure. Okay. Okay, this was an editorial comment from me, just reinforcing uh, your thought on think from the back end. Where do you want to, or what's the problem, and where do you want to go on a logic model? So thanks for stressing that. I really like the National Wildlife Federation, or the Indian, their version of a logic model and how to go about it
Me
as
too.
compared to some that we're used to. So I like that.
Me too.
Okay. Are there grants available if I plan an activity where I teach biologically complete compost making to growers? Let's see, and then I like that we can set attendance goals instead of requiring someone else's actions to change to reach my goals. We can only educate, but clearly in an inspiring way. So I guess a question and a couple thoughts and comments there. So
Yeah. So I would look up biologically. I mean, I would just look up compost on SARE, and then maybe you can put I've never heard of biologically complete compost. That's cool. But maybe you might put biologically plus compost, see if other people have done that. But that sounds like a sustainable project to me for sure. So, but you'd want to work with, I'm guessing you're a farmer. You'd want to make sure you're working with a farmer. And yes, that's the thing. We can't control what other people do, obviously. We can only say what we're able to teach and hope that they gain the knowledge and they catch on what we're sharing. And it would be awesome if they change their behaviors. But you're right. We can't, our work is just to educate the best we can and hope that it can spur on behaviors. But yeah, that's great.
okay,
But yes, that's a
awesome.
sustainable practice. Yeah.
Okay. I just see this just popped up from Suzanne about whatever biologically complete compost. It's compost that has the four functional groups of native microbes that are necessary for nutrient cycling. So
That's
now we
cool.
know what
That's,
biologically complete compost is.
yeah, thanks, Suzanne. That's awesome.
Are grants considered taxable income?
Ooh, that's something I don't even know the answer to, but talk to your regional coordinator. Because that's a good question. I'm not sure about that.
Fair enough. Okay, and I think this may apply to the farmer rancher grants, but I'm not sure. Do all SARE grants require you to have at least $1,000 in farm income?
Great question. So you do not have to make a living growing food. SARE grants have been given to people who are nonprofits and or even community gardeners who are farming in the community. So unlike FSA or even other loans sometimes showing a farm income for a certain amount of years, SARE is not like that. SARE is you basically it's the self-identify as a farmer. You know what I'm saying? And if you're growing things, you can justify yourself as a farmer, in my opinion. I'm pretty broad in the farmer range. So SARE is also pretty broad. Does that make sense?
I guess I would kind of dovetail that question with, do you need a farmer like you would for FSA or NRCS programs? Do you need a farm number?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
You do not.
Okay, very good.
Great question.
Do I have to partner with a land grant university, or can I partner with an individual educator or an independent school?
You can partner with anyone. You don't have to partner with land grant university. Hopefully they would be a partner and be helpful to you, but you don't have to. Yep. Yes, I'll post.
I just thought this was cool. I thought it was worth repeating.
Oh, thanks. Good. That makes me happy.
Yes, we have a recording will be available. Paul has provided the URL. Okay, is the funding available for your agriculture programming and training?
Good question. Yes. So if you are a agricultural professional or a farmer who teaches other farmers, which is called a farmer teacher or a farmer trainer, you might even have the ability to contact your state, depending on where they're at in their funding and what their pool of funding is, and you could get paid your reimbursement of going traveling to get your professional development. So getting to know your local SARE coordinator and seeing what's available to you is helpful for your professional growth as well as you teach others. It's all about teaching others.
Okay. All right. I think that was the end of the ones that I had recorded, but there's always some come in after we start this part. So go back a little bit. Let's see. Okay. I want to write a grant for farming for people with developmental disabilities. Where would I start?
So I would look at the SARE project database first, and then talk to someone like me or someone in your state and share what your thoughts are. There may be someone in your state that's started doing this work as well, so you're not alone. But look on that database to see if anyone local to you or in your state or region has done something like that, and then start building with your idea. And it may grow. You may be able to work together as a team. Just get to know the people who have started doing that work already, and then share your work, and or just see what they've done and start writing your grant and talk to people. There's so many options.
Okay. I think probably the last one, and Suzanne has added a link back to the question about, I assume this goes back to the question on grant income being taxable or not. By any chance, does anybody had a chance to look at it? Suzanne, have you had a chance to look at that link to tell us, give us an overview of what it might say? Because I haven't clicked it yet.
I just clicked it, and it does say that if you do get paid, it says you report any portion of a scholarship, a fellowship grant, or other grant that you must include in gross income as follows. Basically, it tells you exactly how to do it. But so I think if you're being reimbursed for what you're spending, that's not an income. But if you're paying yourself, you'd have to obviously, you know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're paying yourself a salary or a wage, then you need to pay appropriate.
Yes.
Appropriate. Okay. Very good. That's all I see at this point. So unless somebody has any others to toss in there real quick, I think that's it on the questions.
Awesome.
Thanks so much again, Lais, for all your information and passion for this topic, and for making yourself available to share and answer questions that people might have. Thanks to everybody that participated. Just to let you know, the next webinar in this series is scheduled for, get back there, upcoming webinars. I had it and then I went to the archive webinar. So the next one is November 8th, and that is geared toward people that do farm assessments. It's called What Tools Are in Your AgrAbility Truck? So you will likely get an invitation to participate in that. So with that, again, we're archiving this on the website, and we'll let you know about that. So thank you again to everybody that participated, and we wish you a good rest of the day.